Hey everyone, I'm Vito, and today I'm with Eben from Click Results, and we're going to be talking about some of his projects that he was running through WP Feedback, especially how he managed to get feedback from 25 different stakeholders. We're talking more than 300 tasks, a process that was estimated to take between 3 to 4 weeks based on previous projects that they've done. Literally took 3 days, not only to get the feedback, but also go through all of the tasks and resolve them with a team of 4 to 5 people working on the same website, just from Eben's agency right here. So we're gonna hear about this story and get to know Eben a little better. How are you, Eben?
Good, thanks you, Vito.
Awesome. How about you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Great, so my name's Eben. Company's called Click Results. I've got a full-time partner that's in the business with me. It's just the two of us. We make use of the odd subcontractor, but we've learned that we kind of have to take on most of the work ourselves right now. So that's where we are at right now. We do WordPress web design, obviously. My personal passion is SEO. My partner's very good at Facebook ads, and yeah, that's what we do for our clients.
That's awesome. So do you think that the focus is just getting them for a website and then moving them on to marketing services? That's the special sauce of the agency?
Yeah, so the website really is for us the foot in the door to get them onto marketing retainers. And what we both enjoy is real conversion type focused websites. And that's where the name comes from, Click Results.
Right. That's awesome. And then I want to take you to the beginning here, Eben. What were you doing before starting to use WP Feedback? How were your systems? How did that look like?
So we've tried a variety of different systems over the years, from Trello, currently using ClickUp. But the reality is, for gathering client feedback, it used to come in all shapes and sizes. We got Word docs with screenshots. Right. We've got screenshots pasted directly into emails. We've had clients create PowerPoints because they could use all the arrows and bits in PowerPoint. This year, we've also had a few clients sending us WhatsApp voice notes, which is horrible.
That's the worst. That's the worst way to get it.
Client discover Loom, which is a little better than a voice note, but it's still very tricky to use. So in the past year, we've had a little bit of everything. And it's some projects, we even get 3, 4, 5 different types of feedback to different forms as well, which is a mess to keep up with.
Oh yeah. And so how did you keep up with this? So what was was it all landing on your table, your partners?
So I think the reality is that we would miss out on certain things. Right. Between my partner and I, and all the WhatsApp messages and emails and phone calls and voice notes, there was always stuff that kind of just fell through the cracks.
Right.
Obviously, that wouldn't leave a great impression with the client. And considering we use the website project as a foot in the door to get the marketing retainers, I mean, that hurt us a little bit.
Were you kind of starting to be aware of this problem, or how would you define the problem that you were trying to solve?
So I think if I had to sum it up, it was just kind of this feeling of we had to be more organized or better organized. I didn't quite know how to go about doing that. I had heard of WP Feedback and some of the other options that are out there for gathering feedback from clients. And I knew the revision phase was where a lot of the miscommunication began, or the potential for things to drop on the floor.
So you were looking specifically into the revision round and trying to see how we can just create more order into that process.
For sure. Just be more efficient and spend the time doing the actual work and not chasing up and figuring out where the latest comments were made or going through a large email inbox.
And how are you actively trying to solve this? So you said you were trying to work with different project management systems, but specifically with revision rounds, were you trying to create any kind of system before finding out about us?
So I think the closest we got to any form of a system was just to try and force the client to send us one email, one Word document with our big list of revisions. But that also came with not knowing what screen resolution they were using, what browser they were using. So sometimes the Word docs or the emails wouldn't even highlight which page the problem was on. So We wouldn't have any visual reference. We wouldn't have any idea about the technical specifications of their machines. It worked a little bit better, but it was still nowhere near.
Yeah.
I knew that we were still missing a few things.
And when you were getting these kind of documents, what was your process from there? Were you just like highlighting in the doc what was done, what is not?
So we eventually got around to, so we started with the old, my comments in blue, the client's comments in green type of thing, but that became even a bigger mess. We eventually moved to adding comments to a document, and then resolving comments and trying to do a comment chain. But the reality was clients would still just jump into the document and make change to the document and add new bits and pieces. So it was far from
no tracking onto what is new, what is old. Right? Yeah.
And I mean, a document when there's a team of 2 or 3 people working on a project, that becomes a massive headache also.
Right. So like obviously the problem was there, and like how did you feel about it? Like what was your mentality jumping into a project or knowing that this stage is coming when you were facing this with every project?
No, it was frustrating. I think for a long time we were taking 50% deposit to start a website and then 50% upon going live.
Right.
So the revision round was always this, it felt like this last box to check off, but it could drag on for far too long with emails going back and forth and us missing 1 or 2 things, client getting agitated, which meant that last phase where we really want the client to be excited about the website launching, we don't want them to be feeling frustrated. So it frustrated me that we were being inefficient, but it was also, it made me feel bad that felt like we were letting clients down a little bit towards the end of it. By the time we were ready for launch, they weren't excited about it. They were more relieved.
Yes.
Which is not a great position to be in.
And it's kind of like, it reminds me of when people renovate their homes. It's the same thing. Everything is so exciting in the beginning when you see the plans and what is the design gonna be. But then by the time you get the keys, you're just so tired from the process.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember exactly the same thing with my agency as well back then. And then how did you first hear of us, Eben?
Sure, I'm trying to think back. It must have been in some of the Facebook groups, because I've seen some comparisons between the different feedback tools, and I read some success stories and saw the odd video as well. The specific project that we're going to be talking about came across our path just when the worst part of the coronavirus lockdown hit South Africa.
Right.
And because this was our biggest project ever, I knew that we had to step it up, not just 1 notch, but step it up about 3 or 4 different notches. And I just thought this project, finally, we had the budget and everything. We had no excuse. These are engineers, so they are pinpoint and they are precise, so they'll probably enjoy using the tool. So yeah, I thought the timing was absolutely perfect to start using it.
And what was the thing that piqued your interest when you first saw it? Because it is a kind of an out-of-the-box concept, isn't it?
So I think it's just all I think anybody that's ever built more than 2 websites has experienced either the phone call or the email where a user might be telling you, I'm seeing X, Y, and Z, and you are looking at it, but you just don't see the same thing. And then it becomes let's do a team viewer session or do a Zoom call and screen sharing. And even that is painful. And then what I would have done a screen share with a client, then I need to talk them through, let's go check out what your screen resolution is. Because that's not a thing a typical client would even know.
Right.
They don't even know they've got a 13 or a 15-inch screen.
No, they have no idea about this stuff. Yeah.
All of those things would just be so difficult to pinpoint. So I knew that this was a larger company, 1,000+ employees. So if they were going to be sharing it around with even 3 or 4 or 5 different people, there were bound to be all kinds of screen resolutions and different browsers and operating systems and all of those things. So the variables or the complexity of the project I knew was just going to be much more than any of our previous projects. So I had to make sure that we had a good handle on those.
So let's talk a little bit about the project itself. Like, what was the scope? How many How was this defined by you or the client as to what we're building here?
Mhm. So on this project, we worked with a branding agency. They were busy with a rebrand for this engineering company.
Okay.
So we joined the process for the website quite late in the rebranding process. By that time, they had laid down an extensive site map already, a site architecture for us.
Right.
The reality was that as the project went along, we realized that there wasn't enough allowance made for all the pages that needed to be added, all the project information that needed to be added. So the scope very quickly grew. The timeline was fixed, which made me even more thankful for having a tool like WP Feedback. So yeah, the scope was fixed initially. It nearly doubled. Timeline remained the same, so the pressure was on. Yeah.
So you doubled the scope, but the time remained the same, exactly as it was before. And
Yeah.
okay, so then you went through kind of the project, building this whole thing out. You told me that you were using this really from early on, as you were starting to develop the pages, already started to communicate with some of the clients. Because at the beginning, it was just like one or two stakeholders, right?
Yes. So in the beginning, it was the client himself. And then we had the two ladies from the branding agency that were also involved in reviewing. They were typically the first level of review before it would go to the client. And even then I realized that they were also, there was voice notes coming in and screenshots on WhatsApp. So I knew we had to very quickly get everybody on board onto the tool. So initially, when we built a page based off of their designs, we'd send it to them, they would review it, make the necessary comments, assign the tasks to us, we could resolve the tasks, and when they were happy, we could send it to the client. He would then review the page on his side, and then, so there was a lot of back and forth, but a lot of that happened through the tool, and we still had the ability to jump on a screen share if something really didn't make sense, or if I had to show one or two concerns I might have.
Right. Okay. Good. And then, as the project progressed, you kind of reached towards the end of it. It was a pretty long project. It wasn't a couple of weeks job and done. But as you were getting a few months into the project, trying to get it to resolve, then 10 days before the end, or 8 days before the end, what happened?
So this was about a week before launch.
A week before, even worse.
That of all the stakeholders, they kind of had to see their pages for their departments or their areas of expertise. And
it's a massive company, right?
Yeah, so this is 1,000+ employees in the company.
Right.
So these 25 heads of department had to get an eyeball on the website before it goes live. Because at that point, they'd reviewed the content, but that was just in Word format, that they had an internal process. But they had no idea what it actually looked like. So what the images and the content, everything would look like when it was put together. Right. So this was a week before launch. We still, at that point, hadn't finalized the homepage of the site yet.
Oh my God.
The design was still outstanding for the homepage. So stress levels were sky high. But because we had used the tool up to that point with such great success, I think the client knew this was a big ask to ask from us, or a big request.
Because it wasn't planned for the beginning, right?
No, it wasn't. It just kind of came to be. The client insisted that the only way he would allow it is if everybody was forced to use the tool.
Right.
So what we did is we created the 25 user accounts. That was a week before launch. I recorded another quick video on top of the nice videos that you guys have already made. Sent that off, and then we gave them 24 hours to review because we knew the feedback period cycle needed to be as short as possible. Yes. It was about 24 hours. We logged, I think it was just over 300 comments.
Okay.
We then had to take about 12 hours to go through them. 12 hours more now, not physical hours, but about half a day to go through the comments and classify them as urgent, high, low, medium. The client helped us
the whole thing.
We prioritized the whole thing, and then we could get stuck in and smash out the comments. I had to jump in after the prioritization and assign them to various people. And then, yeah, it was about 48 hours later, we had wrapped up all 300 of those tasks.
Amazing.
And yeah, so I think that the client really appreciated that. In an organization as big as they are, it's always very important that people feel part of the process.
Yes.
So I think for them,
everyone wants to give their take, a little take onto the.
So one thing I will say is that's not something developers will typically agree to, not a week before launch. I think everybody listening would call me crazy to even consider it. But the value that the client received from opening it up to 25 people in their business, getting their inputs, I think that was massive. I think that got a lot of buy-in from the whole company into the website.
Right.
Felt that they were part of the project, even though it was a very intense project over a period of months. So I think that helped the clients a heck of a lot, and got us as a company or as a service provider a lot of goodwill from the client.
That's awesome. And you were telling me that before that there was like one project that you did before, like a while back, before you had any kind of systems in place. So just kind of to give that frame of reference in terms of the same size of scope, what was the different time, or more than that, your emotional state after you finished?
So this other project was also for an engineering firm. They were much smaller in size, maybe about 25 employees total.
Right.
Of those 25 employees, 8 of them were directors of the company, so decision makers.
Yeah.
The mistake we made with this project is we didn't have a clear project owner. So we had developed the website. It wasn't very big. It was maybe 15 pages maximum. But because there was no project owner, and because we didn't have a proper revision cycle or a feedback gathering tool, that just kept on going for months and months and months. That website took us a year, and that was painful. That was frustrating, and it got to be one of those projects where you kind of avoided working on it. You didn't want to work on it. And the worst part is there was a 50% deposit or part of the payment outstanding until it was wrapped up. So we had to keep going to get the rest of the payment, but it was just very painful, very frustrating.
Well, that I had the same experience with a few projects like this, like a client that just didn't know how to do these things. And looking back, all of the responsibility is on me for not empowering them with something that they can actually do the work easily, instead of eating that problem for them. I was doing the same thing, and you feel it at night. You think of that website, you get this little cringe, All right, so then, in terms of I want to kind of try and see, like, now that we talked about the revision round, but now you told me that you're already way past it, and now you're using the solution as a way for doing the ongoing support, as well as other aspects of the project delivery process, right?
Yeah, so we are using it for support on that project specifically. I was logging to the tool a little bit earlier. There's a few tasks that I need to attend to. And I also saw your video, I think it was late last week, about gathering content.
Yes.
Just to offer a wireframe type of design. So that's something that really looks very valuable. Right now we are doing wireframes in Google Drawings of all things.
Right.
But I like a system going there, but it takes very long, and it's a PDF with comments, and then you have to redo it. So I think that's another process that we need to take on board.
Yeah, and just so you know, a lot of users are doing it exactly the same way. You use Photoshop or whatever kind of third-party tool to create the entire flow of the website, the mock-up of the whole thing, or not the mock-up, just the prototype of what it would look like. So you can communicate the layout, right? That's the point of this process. But then, crazily, when we all do it, after you created the whole thing in one tool, only then you move on to the browser and build the whole thing from scratch again, instead of trying to create a flow that actually allows you to continue. So just for the people that are listening to the video, we just started offering these templates for Elementor, Divi, and Beaver Builder, as well as Oxygen is coming as well, to allow everyone to just use a template of wireframes that were already created. So it makes the process, again, even for me, it used to take like 2 days to create these things and then get it out there. Now it takes 15 minutes. Would you say 2 days is a kind of a good representation of the time that it takes to create these things? 2-3 days, maybe.
So with the Google Drawings, we've got a decent system, but the reality is, yeah, it takes a good few hours just to put it together. Then there's usually a meeting with the client that takes about an hour and a half to gather about 40% of the content. Then the client needs to think about it and send it back to us. So once we've got all the comments, then we need to put it in. So it's easy a 2-3 day process in terms of time spent.
Yeah.
But it runs over maybe a week or 2 or 3, which is even more painful.
Yes. Yeah. It's all of these dead spots in the project that are actually prolonging it the most, you know. So if we get rid of all of these dead spots, we're golden. Well, that's perfect, Eben. Let me ask you a few more things. So now you talked about some of the other tools that are out there and stuff. So what made you decide to go with WP Feedback specifically?
So I had seen people in the Facebook group saying a lot of good things. I also know the lady, Anshin, here in Pretoria, my home city. She's the organizer of the WordPress meetup, as well as the WordCamp.
Nice.
So when I saw her giving it the thumbs up, and she had tried out most of these tools, so I just knew it had to be WP Feedback.
That's awesome. And then what kind of kicked you over the fence, so to speak? Was that particular project?
So yeah, it's been on my mind for a while. The tool always looked promising, but for this project, I knew we had absolutely no scope to mess up anything. We could not drop a single thing. We had to make sure we do everything we can from our side for it to be perfect. It wasn't just us relying on this project. We had some of our strategic partners also relying on the project. So there was just zero room for error. We had to do it the best we absolutely could. Launch date wasn't going to move. There was a bunch of other offline events planned for launch date. So website was just one piece of a bigger puzzle. Yeah, and I mean, I checked some of the videos. I did the demo. It's pretty easy. So yeah, I was sold.
Awesome. And then would you recommend other freelancers, other agencies around the world to come and join us?
Definitely. I think for a while I thought, I'm not sure that the tool's cost would justify it. But I mean, once you've used it and gathered some feedback on it, I mean, I don't think you can actually calculate the return on investment.
It's like months.
So much time.
Yeah.
And considering what most of us do is either directly or indirectly is we sell our time. So the more time we have available to work on other projects or to work on our businesses. So for me, it's a no-brainer.
That's awesome. And so who would you say this is a good fit for? So when it comes to professionals that can benefit from this?
Mm-hmm. So I think even for those individuals who are a freelancer or working with a client and it's really just them by themselves.
You started like that as well, right?
Yes. So I can definitely see value in someone like that. I think it's very valuable when working in a bigger team where you can assign tasks and you can have an internal rule about what levels of priority needs to be addressed and what time frames type of thing. So I think the tool scales very well from 1 to 3 users all the way up to, like we did, about 30 total.
Right. That's awesome. And just before we wrap up, because so I know you've been doing this for a while, even with some impressive projects under your belt. What would you say is your number one piece of advice, any advice for other agency owners?
So I think I've learned over the last year and a half, maybe, that there's a incredible community out there, and it's inside of WordPress or in web design, but it's also in general business. So for me, I've always wanted to feel part of a community. And I think there are amazing people out there. Just before this call, you shared some valuable insights with me that I'm going to start implementing hopefully this week already. So
awesome.
It's those little pieces of advice for me, either business-wise or web design, that can save you a ton of time, can make the whole process go smoother, have the clients be more happy. Happier clients brings more repeat business, brings more referrals. So yeah, I think reach out, talk to as many people as you can, and yeah, don't ever be afraid to ask for help.
I love that. I think that this is a very important aspect of being a good businessman and an entrepreneur as well, because I always call this like you want to try and find the people with the most amount of arrows in their back so that you don't get them, you know? So definitely great advice. And finally, Eben, where can people find you and learn about your services?
So our website is clickresults.co.za. Or they can look me up on Facebook. If you can drop a link to my personal profile, I'm happy for them to connect with me. I'd love to connect to more people in the WordPress space.
That's awesome. I'll definitely do that. Well, thanks a lot, Eben. Thanks for joining with me today and for sharing your story. And yeah, we'll catch up on the next call.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Vita.